I used to love road trips. There was something magical about the open road, watching landscapes change through the windshield and feeling that sense of endless possibility. But after what happened on Route 50 in Nevada, I haven't driven more than 20 miles from home. Some roads, I've learned, don't want to let you leave. It started as a simple cross-country drive. I had just graduated college and landed a job in San Francisco. My best friend Riley offered to make the journey with me from Boston, turning it into one last adventure before we both started our real adult lives. We planned the perfect route, packed my old Honda Civic with snacks and emergency supplies, and created the ultimate road trip playlist. The first 3 days were everything we'd hoped for, singing badly to 80s hits, stopping at quirky roadside attractions, and taking countless photos for Instagram. But on day 4, somewhere in the Nevada desert, everything changed. We'd been driving for hours without seeing another car, which wasn't unusual for that stretch of Route 50. They don't call it the loneliest road in America for nothing. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of purple and orange, when Riley spotted a sign for a town called Echo Springs. "Let's stop there for the night," she suggested. "I'm getting weird vibes from this road after dark." I agreed, though I couldn't explain why. Something about the deepening shadows felt wrong, as if the darkness was watching us. The GPS showed no record of Echo Springs, but the old-fashioned highway sign promised it was just 5 miles ahead. Those 5 miles stretched impossibly long. The radio, which had been playing clearly moments before, filled with static. Riley tried using her phone to find alternate routes to the next major town, but there was no signal. "That's weird," she muttered, squinting at her screen. "According to my last cached map, there shouldn't be anything out here for another 100 miles. Finally, we saw lights in the distance. Echo Springs appeared suddenly around a bend, a small cluster of buildings including a gas station, a diner, and a motel called the Wayward Rest. The entire town looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1950s. As I pulled into the motel parking lot, I noticed something odd. Every other vehicle there was covered in dust, as if they'd been sitting untouched for months. Yet there were lights on in most of the rooms, and I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains. The woman at the front desk looked startled when we walked in, as if she wasn't used to seeing customers. Her name tag read Mary, but looked faded, almost unreadable. "We don't get many visitors these days," she said, her voice slightly hollow. "Not since they built the new highway." "What new highway?" Riley asked. The GPS only showed Route 50. Mary's smile tightened. "Oh, you must have missed the turn. But you're here now. Room 11 is ready." As she handed over the key, an actual metal key, not a key card, I noticed her hand was ice cold. And something else. Her wrist bore a strange mark, like a bracelet of numbers tattooed into her skin. The room was clean but dated, with a heavy floral bedspread and a TV that still had rabbit ears. Riley immediately tried the phone, but it was dead. Through the thin walls, we could hear voices from neighboring rooms, but they sounded muffled, as if coming from very far away. "Something's not right about this place," Riley whispered. "Let's just sleep in the car and leave at first light." Before I could agree, a knock at the door made us both jump. It was Mary. "Sorry to disturb you," she said, still wearing that tight smile, "but the diner's closing soon. It's the only place to eat for miles. You really should get something while you can." My instincts screamed to decline, but hunger won out. We hadn't eaten since lunch, and the idea of waiting until morning seemed impossible. Besides, we reasoned, what could happen in a crowded diner? But the diner wasn't crowded. Despite every booth being occupied, the place was silent except for the quiet clinking of silverware. As we walked to an empty table, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Every single person was eating the exact same thing. A pale, unidentifiable meat with gray vegetables. A waitress appeared instantly. Her name tag was also faded, and she had the same numbered bracelet tattoo as Mary. "Today's special is the only thing we're serving," she announced. "But don't worry, it's fresh. We just got a new delivery." The food arrived before we could object. It looked even less appetizing up close, but the smell was intoxicating. Riley took a bite and her eyes went wide. "This is amazing," she said, her voice oddly flat. "You have to try it." I picked up my fork, but something stopped me. Through the large diner windows, I could see our car in the parking lot. A group of people had gathered around it, running their hands over its surface almost reverently. They all had the same numbered tattoos. "Riley, we need to leave. Now." But Riley kept eating, mechanically shoveling food into her mouth. "Just try it," she insisted. "Everything makes sense once you try it." I grabbed her arm, trying to pull her up, but she yanked away with surprising strength. That's when I saw it, a fresh mark appearing on her wrist, numbers slowly forming like frost on a window. I ran. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping against the floor and footsteps beginning to follow. I made it to the car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. As I started the engine, I saw Riley in the rearview mirror, standing with the others, her face expressionless. "You can't leave," Mary's voice called out. "No one leaves Echo Springs. We all tried once." I floored the accelerator, tires screeching against the asphalt. In my mirrors, I could see the entire town emerging from buildings, all walking in unison toward my car. Riley was among them, her movements now as mechanical as theirs. The town's exit sign appeared ahead, but something was wrong. The road beyond it seemed to ripple, like a mirage. I pressed the gas pedal harder, even as the engine started making frightening noises. The rippling road stretched endlessly before me, and no matter how fast I drove, the town's lights in my rearview mirror never seemed to get smaller. I drove for what felt like hours, watching my gas gauge drop toward empty. The same stars wheeled overhead in an endless loop. The same rock formations passed by my windows again and again. I was beginning to lose hope when suddenly the sky changed. A sliver of real dawn appeared on the horizon, and the road ahead solidified. I burst out onto Route 50 just as the sun rose. According to my car's clock, only 20 minutes had passed since we'd first seen the sign for Echo Springs. When I finally got cell service again, I called the police. They found no trace of the town, just empty desert. The official report labeled Riley as a runaway, though they never found any evidence of where she went. I drove the rest of the way to San Francisco in a daze, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Every small town made me panic. Every diner filled me with dread. I sold the car as soon as I arrived and bought a bicycle. That was 5 years ago. Sometimes, late at night, I go on Google Maps and search that stretch of Route 50, looking for any sign of Echo Springs. I never find it, but I know it's out there. Once in a while, I get postcards with no return address. They show a sunny 1950s diner, always the same photo. On the back, in Riley's handwriting but not quite her voice, are always the same words. "The special is still fresh. We're waiting for you to come back." I've learned that some roads don't appear on any map. Some towns exist in the spaces between places, feeding on lost travelers who stray too far from the main highway. And sometimes, the people we love become something else entirely, consumed by hunger that nothing in our world can satisfy. So if you're driving Route 50 through Nevada, and you see a sign for Echo Springs, don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't order the special. Because in Echo Springs, you are what you eat. And what eats you becomes something else entirely. I should have listened to my sister when she warned me about driving through Montana at night. "The roads get weird after dark," she'd said. "Especially in the winter." But I was 23 and invincible, or so I thought, and I had a deadline to meet. Now I understand what she meant about the roads getting weird. Some highways don't follow the rules of our world after sunset, and some travelers who disappear on winter nights never disappeared at all. They just took a different exit. It was December 27th, and I was driving from Seattle to Minneapolis for a job interview. My ancient Toyota Corolla was packed with everything I owned, which wasn't much. The interview was on the 29th, and I was determined to make it, despite the winter storm warnings. The trouble started around 8 p.m., just past Bozeman. The snow had been falling steadily for hours, but now it was coming down in sheets, the kind that turn your high beams into a white wall. I should have stopped, found a motel, waited it out. Instead, I kept driving, squinting through the windshield and praying I could at least make it to Billings. My GPS had stopped working an hour ago, just frozen on the last known location. My phone showed no signal. The radio picked up nothing but static, occasionally broken by bursts of what sounded like old-time country music. The mile markers were covered in snow, and I had no idea how far I'd gone. That's when I saw the hitchhiker. He appeared suddenly in my headlights, a tall figure in a dark coat, arm outstretched. I drove past, heart pounding. Who would be out hitchhiking in this weather? But when I checked my rearview mirror, he was gone. Not walking away, not obscured by snow, just gone. 5 minutes later, I saw him again. Same pose, same coat, same impossible appearance in my headlights. This time, I slowed down, more from shock than any intention to stop. As I passed him, I caught a glimpse of his face. His skin was blue-white, like packed snow, and his eyes reflected my headlights like an animal's. I pressed the accelerator, trying to put distance between us. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The temperature gauge on my dashboard was dropping rapidly, even though I had the heat on full blast. Frost started forming on the inside of my windows. When I saw him a third time, I wasn't surprised. But this time, he was facing the wrong way, toward my approaching car instead of away from it. As I drove past, his head turned to follow my movement, neck rotating too far to be natural. The radio crackled to life. Through the static, I heard a voice. Take the next exit. Last chance before Dead Man's Curve. I hadn't seen an exit in miles, but suddenly there it was, a snow-covered ramp leading into darkness. The sign was unreadable beneath its white blanket. Something told me I shouldn't take it, that exits appearing out of nowhere were bad news. But at that moment, my engine made a horrible sputtering sound, and the car began to lose power. I had no choice. I turned onto the exit. The road beyond was narrow and winding, barely visible in the snow. My dying car crept forward, engine whining in protest. After what felt like miles, I saw lights ahead. A gas station, its neon sign flickering weakly in the storm. The station looked ancient, all rusty pumps and faded signs advertising brands I'd never heard of. But it was open, and at that point, I would have accepted help from the devil himself. I parked next to the only other vehicle there, a black Cadillac that looked straight out of the 1950s, its chrome gleaming despite the weather. As I got out of my car, I noticed something odd. No snow was falling here. The air was perfectly still, though I could see the storm raging just a few hundred yards back on the highway. The station's door chimed as I entered. Behind the counter stood an elderly man with the whitest hair I'd ever seen, arranged in a perfectly smooth pompadour. His name tag read Elvis in faded letters. "Rough night for driving," he said, his voice deep and melodious. "Engine trouble?" I nodded, trying to shake off the feeling that something was very wrong about this place. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting strange shadows in the corners of the store. "Lucky you found us," Elvis continued. "Not many folks make it to safety before Dead Man's Curve. Nasty stretch of road up ahead. Seen lots of accidents over the years. I need to get to Billings," I said. "Can you help with my car?" Elvis smiled, showing too many teeth. "Oh, your car's fine now, but you might want to wait out the storm. We've got coffee, fresh pie, made by my wife, Marie. She's been making the same recipe for 60 years. As if on cue, a door behind the counter opened, and a woman emerged. She looked about 30, wearing a 1950s waitress uniform, complete with a paper hat. Her name tag also read Marie, but there was something wrong with her face. It seemed to shift slightly when she moved, like a badly tuned TV signal. "Pie's ready," she said, her voice echoing strangely. "Special recipe. Been serving it since 1957. That's when I noticed the newspaper rack near the door. Every paper showed the same date, December 27th, 1957. The headlines all spoke of a terrible accident on Dead Man's Curve, where an entire family had vanished in a snowstorm. "You're not real," I whispered. "None of this is real." Elvis's smile widened impossibly. "Real as anything else on this road, honey. More real than most. We've been here a long time, keeping folks safe from the curve. Some stay, some go. Choice is yours." I looked outside. The black Cadillac was now covered in snow, its windows dark with age. Through the falling flakes, I could see other cars appearing in the lot, dozens of them, from every decade, all slowly being reclaimed by time and weather. "The hitchhiker," I said. He's warning people, isn't he? Trying to keep them away from here. Marie laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Poor David, still trying to save everyone, even after all these years. He was our first customer, you know? Such a shame about his family. I backed toward the door, but Elvis was suddenly beside me, though I hadn't seen him move. Can't let you leave yet, darling. Storm's too bad. Besides, you haven't tried the pie. The pie sat on the counter now, though I hadn't seen Marie put it there. Steam rose from it, but the steam moved wrong, spiraling up in impossible patterns. The filling was dark, almost black, and seemed to be moving. Just one bite, Marie coaxed. Everyone takes one bite. Then they understand. Then they stay. Through the window, I could see my car. The snow was beginning to cover it, just like all the others. If I didn't leave now, it would become just another relic in their collection. I ran. Behind me, I heard Elvis and Marie calling out, their voices distorting into something inhuman. I reached my car and fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so badly I could barely get them in the ignition. The engine started immediately, purring like it was brand new. I reversed frantically, tires spinning on the snow-covered pavement. As I turned back toward the highway, I caught a final glimpse of the gas station in my rearview mirror. Elvis and Marie stood in the doorway, their forms flickering like bad television reception. Behind them, shadows moved in the windows, pressing against the glass, shapes that might once have been human. I drove back to the highway in a daze, expecting at every moment to find myself trapped in an endless loop or facing the hitchhiker again. But suddenly I was back on the main road, and my GPS was working. According to it, no time had passed since it had lost signal. The storm was gone. The road ahead was clear, and my engine ran perfectly all the way to Minneapolis. I made it to my interview on time, got the job, and tried to convince myself that what I'd experienced was just a stress-induced hallucination. But sometimes, on cold nights, my radio picks up snatches of old country music, playing through the static. And every year, on December 27th, I get a piece of mail with no return address. Inside is always the same thing. A simple recipe card, yellowed with age, titled Marie's Special Pie. The ingredients list is blank except for a single line at the bottom that reads, serves forever. I've researched that stretch of highway extensively since then. There are records of dozens of disappearances over the years, all on snowy nights, all near what locals call Dead Man's Curve. The first was in 1957, a family of 4 in a black Cadillac and a lone hitchhiker who vanished while trying to warn them. The gas station appears in only one photograph, taken in 1957. It shows a young couple standing proudly in front of their new business. Their names were Elvis and Marie Thompson. They vanished the same night as the family in the Cadillac, though their bodies were never found. The gas station itself burned down in 1958, and nothing was ever built on that site again. But I know they're still there, Elvis and Marie, forever young in their own pocket of time, still serving their special pie to stranded travelers, still collecting cars and souls in their snow-covered lot. And somewhere on that dark road, a hitchhiker with snow-white skin still tries to warn people away, seeking redemption for the family he couldn't save. So if you're driving through Montana on a snowy night, and your GPS stops working, pay attention to any hitchhikers you see. And if someone offers you pie at a gas station that shouldn't exist, remember, some places serve a kind of hospitality you can never leave behind. Sometimes the safest path is the one that goes straight through the storm, no matter how dark the road ahead might seem. Because on some highways, the real danger isn't in what might run you off the road. It's in the refuges you find along the way, and the price they ask for keeping you safe from the storm. The rental car's GPS died somewhere between Las Vegas and Death Valley. I wasn't worried at first. I had my phone as backup, and the route was simple enough. Just follow Route 95 south until it met Interstate 15. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert, my phone's signal disappeared too. That's when the radio started picking up a station it shouldn't have been able to receive. You're listening to KDTH, Death Valley's only radio station. A woman's voice crackled through the speakers. It's 7:15 p.m. on this beautiful evening, and we've got a special request coming up for all you lonely travelers out there. I frowned. The clock on my dashboard read 5:45 p.m. The voice continued, "This one goes out to Sarah Chun, making her way home on Route 95. Honey, you might want to take the next turn. The usual way home isn't safe tonight." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. That was my name. I hadn't told anyone I was driving this route. I'd made the decision impulsively after my flight was canceled, renting a car for the 6-hour drive rather than waiting 2 days for the next available flight. A song started playing, something old and scratchy that sounded like it was being broadcast from the 1950s. Through the static, I could barely make out the lyrics. "The long way home is the safe way home, when darkness falls on Devil's Road." I switched off the radio, but it clicked back on by itself. The woman's voice returned, "Sarah, honey, this is your last chance. Turn right at the Joshua tree. You'll know the one." Ahead of me, a massive Joshua tree appeared, its twisted limbs silhouetted against the darkening sky. It stood alone, far larger than any others I'd seen. At its base was an unmarked dirt road heading east. I drove past it. The radio burst into static, then silence. When it came back on, the woman's voice was different, harder, colder. "You should have listened, Sarah." "They never listen." The sun disappeared behind the mountains with unnatural speed, plunging the desert into darkness. My headlights seemed dimmer than they should have been, barely penetrating the gloom ahead. The temperature dropped rapidly, frost forming on the windows despite the warm air outside. That's when I saw the other car. It appeared in my rearview mirror without warning. An old black Cadillac, its chrome gleaming despite the darkness. Its headlights were off, but I could see 3 figures inside, their faces pale smudges in the gloom. The Cadillac pulled alongside me, keeping perfect pace. The driver turned to look at me, a woman in what appeared to be 1950s clothing, her face a mask of concern. She mouthed something I couldn't understand and pointed ahead frantically. I looked forward just in time to see a massive truck materialize out of the darkness, driving straight at me in my lane. I swerved hard, tires screeching on the asphalt. When I recovered control, both the truck and the Cadillac were gone. The radio crackled again. "First warning," the woman said. 2 more to go. Pull over now, Sarah. Please." I pressed the accelerator harder, pushing the rental car to its limits. The desert beyond my headlights had changed. The Joshua trees now looked like reaching hands, their branches clawing at the sky. The mountains in the distance seemed closer than they should have been, their shapes wrong somehow. The Cadillac appeared again, this time ahead of me. It was driving backward, keeping pace perfectly as its driver continued to mouth silent warnings. In the back seat, I could now see a child pressing her hands against the window, her face twisted in terror. Another truck materialized, this one even closer. I wrenched the wheel, nearly hitting the Cadillac as I swerved. When I straightened out, I was alone on the road again. Second warning, the radio announced. "One more chance, Sarah. The long way home is better than no way home at all." The Joshua tree appeared again ahead of me, the same one I'd passed miles ago. Impossible. The dirt road at its base seemed to glow faintly in my headlights. I drove past it again. The radio died completely this time. In the sudden silence, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Children singing, their voices coming from somewhere behind me. "The long way home is the safe way home, when darkness falls on Devil's Road. The short way takes what it wants to take, and keeps what it claims as its own." I checked my rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, but the singing continued, growing louder. The temperature inside the car dropped further, my breath now visible in the air. The Cadillac appeared one final time, but now it was different. Its chrome was rusted, its windows shattered. The woman driver's face had decayed to bone, but her mouth still moved, still trying to warn me. The child in the back seat was gone, leaving only a small handprint on the frosted window. A wall of headlights appeared ahead. Not one truck but dozens, materializing out of the darkness like a tsunami of metal and light. I slammed on the brakes, but nothing happened. The pedal went straight to the floor, useless. The radio burst back to life, the woman's voice now filled with sadness. "Final warning, Sarah. Some roads remember what they take. Some roads want more. And this one has been hungry for a very long time." The headlights grew closer, and I realized I could see through them. See the other accidents happening simultaneously, overlapped like multiple exposures in a photograph. I saw the Cadillac swerving to avoid a truck that hadn't existed in 1957. I saw a family in a station wagon meeting their end in 1963. I saw every death this road had claimed, playing out in endless loops. At the last possible moment, the steering wheel turned by itself, wrenching the car onto a dirt road that hadn't been there seconds before. The parade of phantom vehicles roared past behind me, their light and noise fading into the desert night. The car rolled to a stop by a small building that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. A faded sign read KDTH Radio, the voice of Death Valley. The woman from the radio was waiting outside. She looked solid enough, but I could see stars through her body. "You almost waited too long," she said. "They usually do." "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "Just another traveler who didn't listen," she replied. "I've been broadcasting warnings since 1957. Some nights are worse than others. Tonight." She looked up at the sky, which had turned an impossible color. "Tonight is the worst I've seen in years." "The Cadillac," I said. "That was you?" She nodded. "Me, my husband, our daughter. We were the first. There have been others. So many others. Those trucks aren't trucks at all. They're just how it chooses to appear, how it likes to hunt. The road." She turned to look back toward Route 95, her form flickering like bad reception. "Some places are hungry. This stretch of highway, it's been feeding for longer than anyone knows. Native Americans used to avoid this whole area. Said the land itself was wrong here. How do I get home?" She pointed to a narrow dirt track leading east. "That road will take you to Interstate 15. It's longer, but it's safe. The entity that haunts Route 95 can't follow you there." She paused, her image starting to fade. "But before you go, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Next time you hear my broadcast, listen. The warning isn't just for you. It's for everyone. Some nights, when the road is really hungry, I can't reach people in time. Sometimes all I can do is watch them join the parade." She was almost invisible now, her voice becoming static. "Remember, Sarah, the long way home is always better than no way home at all." I followed the dirt road east. It took 3 extra hours to reach Interstate 15, but I made it home safely. I tried researching the incident later, looking up accidents on that stretch of Route 95. I found records of the woman and her family, Margaret, James, and little Susan Wells, who vanished on a desert road in 1957. Their car was never found. I've made that drive many times since then, always during daylight, always taking the interstate. But sometimes, late at night, my car radio picks up a familiar station. I hear Margaret's voice warning other travelers, trying to save them from her fate. And sometimes, on the darkest nights, I swear I can see headlights in my rearview mirror. A black Cadillac keeping pace, its passengers forever trying to prevent their tragedy from repeating. The official maps show Route 95 as a normal highway, but locals know better. They call it Devil's Road, and they only drive it during the day. Because when night falls, the road remembers all it has taken, and it grows hungry for more. So if you're driving through Death Valley after dark, and you hear a woman's voice on the radio warning you to take another route, listen to her. Some roads lead home, and some lead somewhere else entirely. And sometimes, the longest way home is the only way to get there at all. Mile marker 0. The first time I saw the girl on Highway 61, I thought she was just another hitchhiker. She stood by mile marker 237, her red dress bright against the gray Mississippi twilight, thumb extended hopefully. I didn't stop. You don't pick up hitchhikers when you're driving alone at dusk, especially not on a stretch of road nicknamed the Blues Highway. The second time I saw her, 20 miles later, I knew something was wrong. She wore the same red dress, had the same long dark hair, stood in exactly the same pose. But this time, as I drove past, she turned to watch my car. Her head rotated too far, like an owl's, and her eyes reflected my headlights like mirrors. I was driving from New Orleans to Memphis, taking the famous Highway 61 because I'd always wanted to see it. Growing up on blues music, I'd heard all the legends about this road. About Robert Johnson selling his soul at the crossroads, about ghostly musicians playing at midnight, about travelers who disappeared and were never seen again. But I didn't believe in ghost stories. Not then. The third time I saw her, the sun had fully set. She stood by mile marker 197, which made no sense. The numbers should have been getting higher as I drove north, not lower. When I passed her this time, she smiled. Her teeth were sharp, like needles. I pressed the accelerator harder, trying to outrun whatever game this was. The radio, which had been playing classic blues all evening, suddenly filled with static. Through the white noise, I heard a voice. Mile marker 0 is waiting. Mile marker 0 is hungry. I checked my GPS, but the screen had frozen. My phone showed no signal. The mile markers continued counting down. 175, 162, 144. Impossible numbers for where I should have been. That's when I noticed the other cars. They appeared in my rearview mirror, a parade of vehicles from different eras, a 1950s Chevrolet, a 1970s Volkswagen bus, a 1990s sedan. All of them had their headlights off. All of them were keeping perfect pace with my car, no matter how fast I drove. The girl appeared again, this time standing in the middle of the road. I swerved to avoid her, but she vanished like smoke as my car passed through where she had been standing. The radio crackled. Getting closer now. Can you feel it? Mile marker 0 has been waiting such a long time. The temperature inside my car dropped dramatically. Frost formed on the windows despite the warm spring night outside. The parade of cars behind me grew longer, and now I could see their drivers, pale faces with mirror eyes, all smiling with needle teeth. Mile marker 87 passed, then 65, then 42. The sky had changed. No stars were visible, just an endless black void. The landscape outside had transformed too. Instead of Mississippi farmland, twisted trees lined the road, their branches reaching like claws toward my car. The girl appeared every few miles now, each time closer to my car, each time more wrong. Her dress became tattered, her skin grew gray, but her smile widened impossibly with each appearance. The other cars began pulling alongside me, their drivers turning to stare with those mirror eyes. Mile marker 23. The radio spoke again, but now it was the girl's voice. Do you know why they call it the Blues Highway? Not because of the music, because of what happens to travelers who drive it alone at night, because of how they feel when they realize they can never leave. Mile marker 15. The cars around me started honking their horns in rhythm, a bizarre melody that sounded like a distorted version of an old blues song. I recognized it, Hellhound on My Trail by Robert Johnson. The girl appeared in my back seat. Mile marker 0 is almost here, she whispered, her breath frosting the rearview mirror. Would you like to know what happens there? Would you like to know why none of us can leave? I slammed on the brakes, but nothing happened. The pedal went straight to the floor. The steering wheel turned to ice under my hands. Mile marker 7. The other cars pressed closer, herding me down the center of the highway. Their drivers were singing now, their voices a chorus of whispers. The road goes on forever, but the party never ends. At mile marker 0, where the highway bends, where the blues were born and the crossroads meet, where the devil takes his toll in souls sweet and deep. Mile marker 3. The girl's reflection appeared in every mirror, her face multiplying like a kaleidoscope of horror. Her voice came from everywhere at once. They say Robert Johnson sold his soul at the crossroads, but that's not quite right. The crossroads is just where the highway tastes you. Mile marker 0 is where it decides to keep you. Mile marker 1. The other cars suddenly pulled ahead, forming a barrier across the road. As they stopped, their forms shifted, metal and glass melting together into a wall of chrome and teeth. The last mile marker appeared, 0. The highway itself seemed to rise up, asphalt flowing like water, forming a tunnel of darkness ahead. The girl's laugh echoed from every direction as my car was pulled forward by an irresistible force. Welcome home, she whispered. Welcome to where the blues began. Welcome to where they'll never end. My car plunged into the darkness. I felt a sensation like falling, like being torn apart and reassembled. When my vision cleared, I was still on Highway 61, but it was different. The sky was permanently twilight, the trees were always reaching, and mile marker 0 stood eternally ahead, never getting closer no matter how long I drove. The girl sat beside me now, her red dress fresh and new again. "Don't worry," she said, smiling with those needle teeth. "You'll get used to it. We all do. And soon you'll help us welcome others." The highway is always hungry for more musicians in its endless blues band. That was 3 years ago. Or maybe 30. Or 300. Time doesn't work right here at mile marker 0. We drive endlessly, playing our brutal blues for travelers who stray onto this stretch of Highway 61 after dark. Sometimes they escape. Usually they don't. So if you're driving the blues highway at night, and you see a girl in a red dress hitchhiking, don't stop. If you notice the mile markers counting down instead of up, turn around while you still can. And if you hear strange music on your radio, voices singing about mile marker 0, pull over at the nearest town and wait for dawn. Because some highways don't just connect places, they collect souls. Some roads don't end. They simply loop forever through the darkness. And sometimes, the blues you hear late at night aren't songs at all, they're warnings, echoing from a place where the music never stops and the party never ends. A place called mile marker 0, where every night is endless and every traveler eventually learns to play in the devil's own blues band. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I need to get it off my chest. What happened last December changed everything I thought I knew about human nature and about myself. It started innocently enough. I had just moved to Seattle for my dream job at a tech startup, and that's where I met Marcus. He was charming, brilliant, and seemed absolutely perfect. We clicked instantly over our shared love of vintage video games and horror movies. After 3 months of dating, everything was going great. At least, that's what I thought. The trouble began when I decided to surprise Marcus for his birthday. He had mentioned growing up in Portland and being obsessed with this obscure Japanese gaming console from the 90s, the Neo Geo. He told me stories about playing it at his grandmother's house before she passed away, and how he'd never been able to find one since. I spent weeks scouring online marketplaces until I finally found someone selling one locally. The seller, Chris, lived just outside the city. We arranged to meet at a local coffee shop, but when he arrived, something felt off. He was perfectly pleasant, but he kept staring at me with this strange intensity that made my skin crawl. Still, the console was in pristine condition, and I knew Marcus would love it. That night, I started getting anonymous text messages. Just random strings of numbers at first, then pictures of empty rooms in what looked like an old house. I blocked the number, but the messages kept coming from new ones. I convinced myself it was just spam, even though something in my gut told me otherwise. A week before Marcus's birthday, he suggested we take a trip to Portland to visit his family. "They're dying to meet you," he said with an odd glint in his eye. "Mom's planning something special." I was nervous but excited. Meeting the family felt like a big step forward. The morning of our drive, Marcus picked me up early. I had wrapped the Neo Geo carefully and hidden it in my overnight bag, planning to surprise him when we arrived. But something was different about him that morning. His usual warm smile seemed forced, almost mechanical. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Everything okay?" I asked as we merged onto I-5 South. "Perfect," he replied, but his voice was flat. "Just perfect." An hour into the drive, I noticed we weren't on I-5 anymore. We were on some narrow back road, trees pressing in on both sides. "Shortcut," Marcus said before I could ask. "Much more scenic this way." The trees grew denser, and my phone signal disappeared. That's when Marcus started talking, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. "Did you enjoy your coffee date last week?" My heart stopped. "What?" "With Chris, the guy selling the Neo Geo. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I felt my blood run cold. How did he know about that? "Marcus, that wasn't." "Don't lie to me." He slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "I saw the messages." "What messages?" "On his phone. All those pictures he sent you. The ones of my grandmother's house." My mind raced, trying to piece it together. The anonymous messages, the empty rooms. "Your grandmother's house?" "I don't understand." Marcus laughed, but it wasn't his usual warm chuckle. It was hollow, unhinged. Chris was my cousin. I asked him to find you, to test you, and you failed. Just like all the others. The car accelerated, trees blurring past. I grabbed the dashboard. Marcus, you're scaring me. Please slow down. My name isn't Marcus. His voice was ice cold now. It's William. Marcus was my brother. He disappeared 10 years ago, along with his girlfriend. They never found their bodies. Terror gripped me as I realized the magnitude of what was happening. This man I thought I knew, the person I'd been dating for months, was a complete stranger. The police thought I did it, he continued, his voice rising. They questioned me for weeks, but they couldn't prove anything. They never found the evidence. Never found the others either. Others? My voice was barely a whisper. You really should have done your research better. Checked the news archives. 5 missing persons cases in the last decade. All couples. All disappeared on their way to Portland. The car swerved violently as he turned onto an even narrower road. Through the trees, I could see the glint of water, a lake or river. But you were different, he said, his voice softening momentarily. I thought maybe you were the one who would understand, who would pass the test. But you're just like them. Meeting strange men in coffee shops, keeping secrets. The Neo Geo, I stammered. It was supposed to be your birthday present. That's all it was. Please, I can prove it. It's in my bag. He laughed again, that horrible empty sound. Oh, I know all about the console. Did Chris tell you where it came from? It was my grandmother's. The same one Marcus and I used to play. The one that disappeared the night they did. My hand crept toward the door handle, but he noticed. In one swift motion, he pressed a button, and I heard the locks click. We're almost there, he said. Almost home. Through the trees, I could make out the shape of an old house perched on the edge of the water. My blood ran cold as I recognized it from the anonymous photos, the empty rooms, the peeling wallpaper. Your grandmother's house, I whispered. Smart girl. This is where it all started. Where Marcus brought his girlfriend. Where they all end up eventually. The car was speeding up, heading straight for the water. I had seconds to act. In desperation, I reached for my bag in the back seat, grabbed the wrapped console, and swung it as hard as I could at his head. The impact caused him to jerk the wheel. The car skidded, tires losing grip on the wet ground. We spun once, twice, then crashed through the guardrail. But instead of plunging into the water, we hit a tree, hard. The airbags deployed, filling the car with white powder. Through the haze, I could see William was unconscious, blood trickling from his temple. My hands shook as I fought with the door lock, finally managing to force it open. I stumbled out of the car and ran, my legs barely holding me up. Behind me, I heard movement, then his voice. You can't escape. They never escape. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, crashing through undergrowth, branches whipping my face. I could hear him pursuing, his footsteps getting closer. The house loomed ahead of me, my only option. I burst through the front door, taking in the familiar empty rooms from the photos. But now I could see details the pictures hadn't shown. Scratch marks on the walls, dark stains on the floorboards, a pervasive smell of decay. His footsteps thundered up the porch steps. In panic, I ran for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. At the top, I froze. The hallway was lined with doors, but one stood open, revealing a room filled with old video game consoles. Dozens of them, arranged in neat rows. Neo Geos, all exactly the same model. Do you understand now? His voice came from behind me. Every console, every test, every failure. They all end up here. I turned slowly. William stood at the top of the stairs, blood running down his face, his eyes wild. In his hand was a knife. But you're different, he said, stepping closer. You fought back, just like Marcus did, at the end. Maybe that's why I chose you. Maybe that's why you'll be the last one. He lunged forward, but I was ready. I grabbed the nearest console and hurled it at him. He stumbled, losing his balance. I shoved past him, but he caught my ankle. We both fell, tumbling down the stairs in a violent cascade. We landed hard at the bottom. Pain shot through my body, but adrenaline kept me moving. I scrambled to my feet, but William was faster. He grabbed my hair, yanking me back. Together forever, he whispered, raising the knife. At that moment, the front door burst open. Flashlight beams cut through the gloom, and voices shouted, "Police! Drop the weapon!" William's grip loosened in surprise, and I wrenched free. As officers swarmed in, I saw Chris step through the door, his badge visible on his belt. "Sorry it took so long," he said, helping me up. "We had to wait until we had enough evidence." Until he let us hear himself. Later, I learned the truth. Chris wasn't William's cousin. He was an undercover detective who'd been working the case for years. The anonymous messages hadn't come from William. They'd been from the police, documenting the house while building their case. They'd known about William for years, but couldn't prove anything until they caught him in the act. They found evidence of everything in that house. The missing couples, Marcus and his girlfriend, all of them. William had been living out the same scenario over and over, trying to recreate whatever happened that first night with his brother. It's been 6 months since that day. I'm in therapy now, working through the trauma. Sometimes I still wake up in cold sweats, remembering the empty rooms, the rows of identical consoles, the look in William's eyes when he revealed his true self. But the hardest part isn't the nightmares or the panic attacks. It's the knowledge that for 3 months, I shared my life with a monster and never saw it. That's the real horror. Not knowing if the people closest to us are wearing masks, playing roles, hiding darkness behind their smiles. I don't date anymore. I'm not sure I ever will again. But I did keep one thing from that day. The Neo Geo from my bag, the one I used to save my life. It sits on my shelf now, a reminder that sometimes the perfect gift isn't what it seems. Sometimes it's just another prop in someone else's twisted game. And sometimes, the most dangerous monsters aren't the ones hiding in the darkness. They're the ones hiding in plain sight, wearing familiar faces, calling themselves by false names, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal their true nature. The police never found all the consoles William collected. They say some are still out there, being sold online, passing from hand to hand. So if you're ever browsing marketplace ads and see a vintage Neo Geo for sale, think twice before meeting the seller. You never know who might be waiting on the other side of that coffee shop door, wearing a mask of normalcy, planning their next perfect game.